message to our brothers and sisters.
Once upon a time, we had our land, our culture, and our minds. Surely we had tribes, but we all lived right there in Africa. Things began to change. There were
Hotep, I'm Dr. Gloria Lattimore Peace, host and producer of OmniU Presents the H3O Art of Life show. Today we're going to talk about leadership again, and we're going to talk about leadership with one of the same people that we started this conversation with, Dr. Conrad Worrill, who is director of the Carruthers Center for Inner City Studies and has been there for how many years now?
35, Gloria.
35 years, was a member of the faculty, and do you still teach as well?
I go in the classes. I don't formally
classes.
teach. I consider myself teaching all the time.
Okay, well, let's do some teaching here today. We want to talk about leadership. The last time you were here, you did a very good job of going through the history of leadership, the kinds of leaders we've had in the past, and the kinds of things, that those leaders did and represented. Now we're in another phase of leadership. This is brand new for us as a community. We have an African American president, and we have several African Americans in the president's cabinet. And we have great hope, and we're very optimistic about what may trickle down to our community because of the position of the president in the leadership of the country. But we also at the same time here in the city of Chicago have grassroots leadership protesting in the streets about matters that have to do with the education of our youth. So we need to take a look at the leadership from the bottom up as well as from the top down and see what it is we need to do and what's happening in our city and throughout the world if we can.
Yeah, I think we've taken the movement around black political empowerment. It's reached its zenith with the election of this country's first African American president.
Mm-hmm.
But people have always said that all politics are local. So as we have emerged in the electoral arena with more than 11 or 12,000 black elected officials in the United States, the question is, how has this significantly in any way changed the condition of black people in this country?
Mm-hmm.
And so with our emergence in electoral politics, there seems to be a disconnect from our national phenomenon called electing this country's first African American president and its relationship to local political activity. And therein is our challenge. We have the numbers. We have aldermen, we have state representatives, we have state senators, we have 3 black congressmen, we have the Cook County Board presidency here in the city of Chicago. But our political grassroots independent organizing base has been subsumed into the main political party organizing, which is the regular Democratic Party organization. And so what we are challenged with now is how do we get back to an independent thrust? It's almost like starting over again when in the 1950s in this city, in the 1960s in this city, when grassroots organizing was laser beam focused on critical issues. The critical issues are more critical now than they were then. The prison industrial complex. I don't know if you're aware, Gloria, but in certain parts of the country, when you come out of prison on home confinement, there's something called a tether. And a tether is a device they put on you, and they charge you in some areas. I know over in Benton Harbor, Michigan, because I know a minister who had to go to prison. We got him out of prison because he was challenging the powers to be in Benton Harbor, Michigan, Reverend Pinckney. He's on a tether. and this tether costs him $125 a week to be on the tether. So he has to pay the county over $500 a month to be out of jail. So the closing of the mental health center right here in Chicago on the south side of the city, 4 mental health centers are being closed. The whole question of education and the school closing in this city. So the issues are right before us, our family deterioration, but our organizing isn't. So I think that if the Obama presidency means anything, we need to take his rhetoric and turn it into our own space. Obama has said that he can't do it all, and I agree with him, and that we, the people, need to take responsibility. And I think that we, the people, particularly in the black community, need to take responsibility for addressing many of the issues as we have in previous generations. We're not organized. We're fractured right now. Are just fractured. That's the best word I can use. That we're not using the strengths of coming together. We achieved our most impact in this city on the question of having influence and positions of power when we came together. But right now, our community is splintered all over the place.
Let me interrupt you just for a moment because our other guest is joining us, and I want to get back to exactly the things that you have raised about the fact that we're fractured, and the fact that our families are in disarray, and the fact that we are victims or are too well represented in the prison industrial complex. And then to add to that, that the mental health center has closed. That the implications here
4 of them.
So we need to talk about that. So let's go to black. Let's fade to black and let our other guests join us, and then let's get back to those things. I'm back and I'm proud.
Hey.
I'm here now. I've got William Doc Walls as well as Dr. Conrad W. Worrill. And just listen a while, Bill, get warmed up to this, because Conrad just laid down a paradigm. You know, he hooked a lot of things up together, including the fact that we are fractionalized in every way, family, community, organizations, all of that. Right. And 4 mental health centers have closed. I'm thinking now that we have all of these issues. You know, we have the same issues that the rest of the country has, and we have them in much larger number and much more severely. So here we are in an economic downturn, in a climate that is hostile in every way to survival, and we have all these problems. We have we're hemorrhaging young people going into these prisons. And then when you broke the news that you have to pay not to be in prison, that was something I don't think is widely known. I certainly didn't know it. So we have all of these problems. We have every kind of social problem that we can have. The mental health centers are closing or have closed.
They haven't
and
closed yet.
we can't even lose our minds over this situation. You know, this is stressful. This is the kind of stuff that will drive people to all kinds of things, to drink, to drugs, to you name it, because you don't really know what to do when you're hemmed in like that, when there's nowhere you can turn for any kind of support. What do you see in this paradigm?
Well,
you just laid out?
the first thing is we can't get trapped into this idea that we're in a post-racial period because we've elected a black president of the United States. We can't be tricked by that. The problems that black people face, not only in Chicago but throughout the country, have our uniqueness as a people. it appeared that when we had less elected officials, we had more power. So the question now is, because our numbers in the electoral arena have expanded, its relationship to our condition doesn't seem.
It's inverse.
Yeah. So
One goes
so there
down.
was a period in Chicago when we called meetings, and there was a period in Chicago that the community, even people that you may not think who would be in those meetings, would at least come to the meeting. So I can't recall us really mobilizing around any one issue and staying with that issue in a long time. So I'm sure Doc Walls will talk about what happened in Chicago around the school closing protests, because this closing of schools and the economics related to the school closing has not really been followed in this city, because it's related to gentrification, it's related to the repopulation of Chicago and preparing and positioning Chicago for the Olympics in 2016. So we have not taken one issue and stayed with that issue like we took education in the 1960s and manifested itself for a brief moment. We were in control of the Board of Education, not only the school board in numbers, but the superintendency. So I think it becomes a question now of what kind of organizing do we employ using technology, using the advanced instruments of organizing that are available to us, but we can't get trapped into thinking that this is some kind of post-racial situation. This situation is laser beam on people of African descent in this city that has set up a situation for middle income and upper middle income blacks to be all right, and pushing the masses of blacks out of the city into the suburbs and into the penitentiary. That's what we really have going on, and preparing the city for the big boom if Chicago gets to the 2016 Olympics. And I don't think we're really conceptualizing the problem in that context.
It's hydra-headed. You know, you say you can't pick one issue and stay with that issue. It's because you just named how this issue is related to all the other issues. If in fact they move out all of those people in the area where they want to put the Olympic Village, then of course you're talking about the gentrification problem. You're talking about dislocating
Then we have another real problem that
from their neighborhoods and their homes.
if the stimulus package passes with the Obama administration, and I'd like to hear Brother Walls comment on this, how are we in position to extract on the ground these monies that are going to come to city government? If they come to city government, we're not in position to extract the resources so they get to the people, because these monies will be going to city hall, the county government, some monies will go to state government, and right now we're not positioned politically to really influence those resources to really come to the programs and to the communities and go towards the programs and projects that they need to. So we'll be lost again, because really as a community right now we're not organized.
Very good point, Conrad.
Go ahead.
Here on January 15th of this year, we held what was called Obama Day, a celebration fit for a king. That was Dr. Martin Luther King's natural birth date. It was the coldest day of the year to date. I woke up that morning, it was about 9 degrees below zero. Yet and still, when I got over to First United Methodist Church at Washington and Clark at 9:30 in the morning, there were already 300 young people sitting there waiting to simply get on the database so that they're in line to receive some of these jobs as a result of this stimulus package, $825 billion that's supposed to come down from the Obama administration. And President Obama is committed to preserve and establish an additional 4 million jobs. Conrad's absolutely right. We have to make sure that our people are ready and prepared to receive those jobs the moment they start coming down. You cannot wait until the jobs start flowing to begin to line up and to put your name in the database. And these young people understood that. Before the end of the day, we'd serviced about 500 young people. These are people who are way beyond the reception of unemployment benefits. They've exhausted every benefit available to them. They don't have welfare to work. They got cut out of that by Bill Clinton. In addition, these are people who, many of whom have just got out of incarceration, so they're still trying to get their bearings. They're disoriented in a sense. The life is moving so fast that they haven't had time to just catch up. So we started with them, but we also reached out to small business because 95% of all people are employed by small business. So we're insisting that small businesses get grants so that they can hire people. It's not sufficient to give small businesses a tax break if they will hire people. That's
after the fact.
That's exactly right. That's after the fact. So we're fighting to ensure that relief goes not only from Wall Street to Main Street, middle class, but goes from Wall Street to Y'all Street. And that's our website, from Wall Street to y'allstreet.com.
And what were you doing today?
Excuse me. Today, we were out for two reasons. One, to say no to Renaissance 2010, which is Mayor Daley's initiative designed to weaken the foundation of public education and facilitate the privatization of schools. It's a program by which Daley is closing 100 schools in the city of Chicago, primarily in areas that are populated, excuse me, by African Americans. He's doing that, as Conrad indicated, to prepare for the Olympics. You know, communities are built around parks, schools, and libraries. If you're closing down the schools, if you have parks that people can't visit, and if the libraries are ineffective, people move away in search of better services. And as they move away, you leave a void that allows people to move in with money and assume that property, rehabilitate it, regentrify that neighborhood, and make it impossible for those people who are indigenous to those communities to stay put. And that paves the way for the Olympics. The closing of the mental health facilities is also part and parcel of that. We have a demonstration tomorrow. And that demonstration will take place first in front of the Woodlawn Center, and then we'll move downtown at 11 o'clock and do a secondary press conference. But the goal is to fight to keep them open. They're closing those facilities because Mayor Daley's administration failed to bill the state for client services. And in so doing, they came up short about $1.2 million. And they're expecting the people who need the services most to take the brunt of it, saying we're going to close those centers along the southeast corridor in Roseland and also in back of the yards surrounding the Olympics. So they want to clear those people out whom they deem to be unstable and non-productive. So those are fights that have to take place on all fronts. Conrad is absolutely right. We have not had consistent meetings on issues of importance to our community, but that's because we haven't learned to connect the dots. Now that we're learning to connect the dots, we can have results.
Yeah, this is called generational discontinuity in organizing in this case. I mean, we've had some tremendous victories in this city, but the spirit of self-determination has kind of gotten away from us. There's a feeling that we can't do anything anymore. Mayor Daley's been the mayor for 20 years. What's the use? The people have run against him so many times. He's been victorious. So there's this spirit that our energy has gone to the White House, but we live in Chicago. We still live in the city of Chicago. So the relationship to the spirit that's transcended itself to a black man sitting in the White House, this spirit has to come back on a local level, and we have to take responsibility for, once again, taking ownership of the issues that impact on us and stop allowing other people outside of our community to direct what's going on in our community. So that was a principle of the 1960s that we stood on. And
community control.
Community control, to have a significant control, significant influence on what goes on in our own communities. We don't have that right now. People do anything they want to do in the black community. So we have to get a spiritual energy going again that says time out for other people who live in the suburbs, who live in other states, in fact, live in other countries, to come and profit off the backs of our oppression and the weakness that we find ourselves in right now. We're really not weak, but our spirit is weak. And what we need is a spiritual renewal to get prepared to fight against the forces that are taking advantage of the weakness we find ourselves in because we're not organized. See, these are organizing principles. You have to start off that you can win. And we haven't had a victory in a long time. So we have to demonstrate that we can still fight, that we can still resist, that we're still a self-determining people. And for the community, the black community that is still left in Chicago, we need to protect our interests.
And
it's just that simple.
We have to have a common agenda, and we don't have that. We're too busy chasing our tails right now. We're reacting to everything that Mayor Daley is doing, and we're not setting an agenda that's progressive and that's according to a timetable that we've established. So we have to get past things like the Huberman appointment and make certain that we fight that with all we have. We have to get past this Renaissance 2010 program and close that down, because they're closing down our schools in good neighborhoods that have value. You know, land is everything, and land has value. Those neighborhoods have value. We also have to be about the business of determining our next political move. Politics is a personification of a deliberate effort to develop a relationship, create a perception, influence a decision, or otherwise determine who has to pay, who gets to play, and who has the final say, whether in the boardroom, courtroom, or on the streets. And we are not politically astute yet. We're getting caught up in the minutia of rumors and who shot John. We're excited about President Obama's ascension to the highest office in the land. But as Conrad indicated, we haven't planted our feet and decided that we're going to do something here that makes him proud instead of just being proud of him.
Well, you know, when you hear the magic word change, I think most people think change just is automatically means change for the better. Change does not carry with it any assurance that there will be an improvement in your condition. Change is just that. It means something will be different. When Bill Clinton said he was going to end welfare as we know it, he ended welfare as we know it, and we see the homelessness and the despair and the broken people and families that resulted from having these makeshift jobs programs and so forth and so on that were supposed to prepare people in 2 years for jobs that never materialized in our community.
That's right.
So change means nothing unless we direct the change. And it won't just, our condition is not going to change unless we change it. I've known for a long time things about how the community is victimized, when the community is not alert and when the community does not mind its own business. I've lived on the west side as well as the south side, and I have seen people come into the community from outside of the community and organize the community against itself, get the community distracted planting flowers. I'm not saying I'm against having beautification programs in neighborhoods, but you have neighborhoods where schools are the issue, where other things that are vital to survival and development are the issue, and you have these missionaries that come into the community, these do-gooders, and they come in and they get the people all involved in some stuff that is fluff and is window dressing, and when they leave, the community feels good about itself, but its condition has worsened while they were busy, you know, playing with paper dolls. So we have to be very careful who we allow to come into the community to organize us. Our leadership has to come from us, and it has to have a track record. You cannot have people taking over your institutions, whether they are your churches, your schools, or whatever institutions are vital. You cannot sit idly by and think it does not matter who is running the stores, you know, who is everybody that's doing anything in your community that impacts the community ought to be under a microscope. You ought to be looking at that, because you'll have people working against the community while the community is trying to uplift itself, they will be undercutting the ground. Marion Stamps. Do you remember Marion Stamps?
I remember.
Marion Stamps was my idol as a community leader.
She had
And
an
she-
organization
she
called
had-
Tranquility Marks.
That's right.
Right.
On the in Cabrini Green. See, we can't see right now. There's a psychological warfare going on that's suggesting to black people that we don't have to use our strength in organizing. That the day for us being black it means that if you organize around your interests, your culture, your race, your history, your conditions as a people, that somehow you're anti another group. But the other groups keep their culture, their ethnicity intact in Chicago. The Irish, the Italians, the Polish people, and the Jewish people, they're very clear. So we cannot be confused. We have to get some concepts in our head right now. And sometimes in movements have peaks. We reach a peak. Our peak probably in Chicago was when we elected Chicago's first black mayor.
Harold Washington.
When Harold Washington made his untimely transition away from us, we've been on a downward spiral ever since. And so we have to look at it in this context. It's time for us to make a comeback and have our people understand, just because some of the young people have benefited and gone away to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, or wherever they've gone with, that they cannot be disconnected from their people.
But that is the disconnect. They take the brightest among our children, the most promising, and they give them all kinds of grants and all kinds of loans so that they can go away from home and lose their bond with the community, with the families. When you get some of these young people back, they are strangers. They don't know you. They don't feel you. They don't relate to you. So it's very important that we understand that we are not educating our own children, that other people are controlling the education of our children, and they're even sending them away from home so that they can gain even greater control of the minds of our youth.
Well,
Yes, and
people who are in
indoctrination.
power understand that one way to control a people is through its educational institutions. So I don't really fault Mayor Daley for making education his organizing project. I fault us for allowing this to happen. So allowing the one organizing issue in the city of Chicago that we were been successful in for so many years, to let somebody else take that away from us and not go down with a fight, that's on us. So I think that what Doc Walls and the younger activists today are doing, because I'm not doing some of the same things that I used to do, but somebody needs to be doing them. If it means going and filling up some jail cells, whatever tactic and strategy it means to get our people fired up to fight around our own interests. That's what seems to be missing in Chicago. We don't have the spirit to fight, to say, you are not going to do this. We're going to stop you from doing this. And the movement grows and grows and grows until we get the attention. See, politics determines who gets what, where, when, and how. And right now, we're not determining very much. So I applaud the young people who were down there, or whoever was down there. I don't know if they were all young, because movements make up all components of your community, and there's a role for everybody. But right now in the city of Chicago, it seems to me that we must come back together and get the splintering off the table and call some meetings where we come in the room to get prepared to fight and stay on an issue until we're victorious on that issue.
It'll be a beautiful day when we actually do that, when we get everybody to understand that there's nothing negative about getting out and making your voice heard, getting out and being seen in conjunction with a whole lot of other people, building coalitions around issues that are important to our mutual communities. We don't agree on everything, and we shouldn't be expected to agree on everything, but there's some things that we absolutely and completely do agree on, and we have to get out here and fight together on those issues. And that means leaving the comfort of your home. That means putting down your remote, taking your feet off of your ottoman, getting out of your easy chair and getting out there in the elements, getting hot or cold depending upon the time of year, and being determined to make a difference, but also to establish some camaraderie with other people. Because once you get out there and experience the joy of just getting out and chanting and moving together in a group with singularity of purpose, you'll come back. But we haven't had that in a long time, and that's what Conrad alluded to earlier. We haven't had a people come together and fight about any issue in a sustained manner. We have to do that. People have to recognize that things are not going to change, as you indicated, just because you throw out the mantra
They will change because change is the nature of the universe. So things will change, but in what direction?
That's right.
And so you have to guide change.
That's right. And one of the greatest things President Obama said is he can't do it by himself. And he invited everyone to pitch in. Show that spirit of determination. Decide that you want to make a difference in society. Get out here and make a mark. Get out here and take a stand on something. Get out here and push somebody and help somebody get ahead. And that's what we have to do.
And when I think of how irrational, it just seems irrational to have someone who has no background in education and apparently no interest in it either, to become the head of the school system, which is predominantly black. Now, I know the president said there is no black America, but I can't buy it, because if there is no black America now, there was never a black America. So there was no King, and there was no Malcolm, and there was no Frederick Douglass, and there was no Carter G. Woodson, and we have no history. We are Americans, and we have there's nothing peculiar about our condition. There's nothing unique about our treatment. We have no issues that we can say are issues that other people don't have.
Yeah, but see, Gloria, on the question of the CEO of the Chicago Public Schools, we missed the boat when legislatively the rules were changed.
1995.
And the rules were changed, and there was a reorganization of the Chicago public school system that gave the mayor the authority that he has now. Prior to that, the person who was the superintendent of schools had to have a teaching certificate, had to have an education background. But Mayor Daley's political forces got that taken off the table. So that's where you got your Paul Vallis, your Arnie Duncan, and now Hooverman, because the structure of the Board of Education. So the fight may not necessarily, I mean, we have to fight against people we don't think are qualified to run the school system. But we also have to fight to reenact legislation to put back on the table that the person, he's not going to have somebody who's in the health field running the Chicago Police Department. He's not going to have somebody who's in the law field run a hospital. But in education, they think anybody can come and be the head of education. That's in this city, the students are still, the majority of the students are black and Latino in the Chicago public school system.
Face it, the budget of the Chicago public schools is $5.6 billion a year. So having a CEO in place who runs it as a business means it's all about money, jobs, and contracts, and ensuring that Daley's favorite people, his favorite contractors, his cronies, continue to get the huge contracts that they're accustomed to so they can contribute to his campaign funds. So this is what a CEO is about, and he wants someone whom he doesn't have to give direction to, but they know automatically what to do. Here's a man that was a police officer. He was his chief of staff. He was head of CTA, and now he's head of CPS. That was an excellent opportunity for Daley to ensure that he has more to give to his friends, and we have to stand in the way of that. We cannot allow that to be the empowering mechanism for Daley's political machine. We have to resist it.
Well, we've traditionally, because I was a public school teacher for many years before I was a university professor, and I did notice that whenever there was a so-called teacher strike, there was about a dozen other unions who carried the strike further than the teachers wanted to go, and until their demands were met, the teachers could not return to their classrooms. So I always wondered why they named it a teacher strike when the teachers were the last people who could control the direction of the strike. They could not end the strike when their demands were met. The strike had to, the demands of all these other unions had to be met. And you looked at all of these people who were not teaching, but who, if they weren't there, you couldn't go in the room, in the building. If you didn't have the firemen there, if you didn't have the custodians there, there were people that you could not open a school building unless they were there. So here you have all of these people who have jobs. And we have all of this unemployment in the black community. What are we talking about? We have a school system that's majority black youth.
That's right.
And yet when black youth complete their education in the school system, they can't get these jobs. Therefore, they can't get in these unions. And consequently, their education is almost for naught.
Pointless.
Because we can't generate the jobs that they should be able to take. So when you look at it just from a financial standpoint, why are my children being educated not to be able to take care of themselves?
That's right.
And why would I want why would I want this thing to continue as it has? We have enough evidence now to know that it does not work. If there's not somebody who is interested in the education of the children in the schools, particularly the majority population, then you cannot expect them to make the decisions that will enable those children to advance and to develop.
No,
Well,
that's
we have
absolutely
the.
right. 19,
Scott,
just
go
real
ahead.
quickly, 1935 to 1943, right in the throes of the Depression, the government came in and it hired 8 million people, and they allowed people to do anything they wanted to do. If you were a painter, they allowed you to paint. If you were a sculptor, they allowed you to sculpt. If you were a writer, they allowed you to write. If you were good working with your hands and with tools, they allowed you to help build public buildings. They found something for everybody to do. So education really became irrelevant because you were going to get a check at the end of the week. We have to recognize that, yes, education is critical and important, but we have to feed people right now. As we talk about this stimulus package and ensuring that it has impact in the lives of everyday people, we have to fight for programs that will ensure that every family is going to eat. See, if money comes down for public buildings and public works projects here in the city of Chicago, as you indicated, our people are not union, and those jobs will go to union people. So we have to be prepared to have an argument about where that money is going and how it's going to be spent. We need money for weatherization in people's homes, and that will ensure that people who are part of those communities are able to go to work immediately. So you're right. People have to see where there's value in their tax dollars being spent in their community.
And then when you know, the reason I put this emphasis on education is because what is the mantra? Go to school so you can get a good education, so you can get a good job.
That's right.
Now, how long you think that mantra can hold when you see all of these well-educated people who are unemployed, who are living at home with their parents and otherwise, unable to take care of themselves? So obviously there has to be a reason why our children have the motivation to want to excel in school. It has to have some sort of goal. And so when you remove the goal, then what's the point?
Right.
So I understand, and I want both and.
Yeah.
I don't want either or.
Yeah.
I want us to have everything that if we are Americans, then we need to have what Americans have. And Americans have equal rights, and Americans get to play on a level playing field. These are all the things I keep hearing people say. In a democracy, people are treated fairly. And if the legislature wasn't so busy down there trying to impeach somebody, they could be taking care of this legislation that you're talking about, where the mayor has the power to appoint the head of the school system, rather than a system in which it can be done in a manner that is more fair.
Well, under the old system, it was the board that selected the superintendent.
The Board of Education.
The Board of Education.
So what does the board do now?
Nothing, absolutely nothing, to be perfectly honest with you. They're not a decision-making body. The CEO makes the decisions. In 1995, as Conrad indicated, when the state legislature gave Daley the power, he said we have to have a structure like a corporation with a CEO, a CFO, a COO. We have to reduce administrative costs. The problem is, if education is supposed to be the primary focus of the educational system, then we should have a superintendent who understands education better than anybody in the world, and then let that person hire beneath them an administrator. That would make sense, not the other way around. Now you have a CEO who then goes and gets people who are qualified to be the superintendent of schools but don't have the title. So it's reverse. It's ridiculous. It makes no
That's our
sense.
history. We have always had the work to do, the responsibilities, but not the titles.
That's right.
If you can remember going to grade school, at least I can remember that the assistant principal who actually ran the school, who actually took care of everything, the discipline problems and everything else that went on, was always the African American, and the principals were always white. It was a colonial school system.
That's right.
And the whites didn't relate to the young people. They didn't relate really to their faculties. They hid out in their offices and came out and did ceremonial things in the auditorium, for assemblies. But the people who actually do the job, the actual laborers, the actual foot soldiers, the people who actually hold it together and who are underpaid for the privilege, who work the longest hours, are always us. We need not to keep repeating that. We need to, we are qualified for everything. We can do everything. We have demonstrated it time and time again. So we ought not to be happy or even satisfied to see ourselves always in an assistant position. Always the second runner-up or the third runner-up. We ought to want to see ourselves in positions of authority where we have the power to exercise decisions and not just follow the instructions of the people who are in authority.
Well, I'm just maybe perhaps from the old school. I believe we're going to make a comeback. I don't believe it's lost. We're a little down right now as a people. But we got to come back to the sense of community. See, school reorganization, dismantlement of our communities, the prison. I mean, people knew what they were doing, and the result we're seeing. So if we understand that there were plans to dismantle our communities, to disrupt the strengths that we've had as a people, then it seems to me we have to step back and say, what are our strengths? What is it that could be salvaged? And how do we organize to reclaim power over the control of our lives? Once again, we did have greater influence at one time over the direction of our communities than we have right now, when we seemingly have more people with college degrees, more people seemingly who work in corporate America, and people who have been trained to do this, that, and the other. We got more basketball players, football players, people on television, et cetera, but this has not translated. As a matter of fact, it has shifted away from the question of self-determination. It's not about one ball player on a team or two ball players on a team, or a Negro getting an acting role in a movie and producing it and getting real wits. See, we're into this individualism idea, but people only advance when they understand that their advancement is tied to a group. And we've gotten away from group advancement.
There is no black America. How are you going to be tied to a group in post-racial America?
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's some ideas out here that have to be defeated. As a matter of fact, you know, Glory, we didn't even say, we always made a distinction between education and training. And so education is the inculcation of the values of a society. So training is skill development. And so education for us should be the inculcation of the values to enhance the interest of people of African descent. That should be education. But we've gotten away from what we're really talking about. So, you know, I think the spirit of our ancestors as we go into this month of African American History Month, hopefully we can use some of this ancestral energy to get back to ourselves, because we only advance when we're advancing from the point of view of our strength. And our strength, here's a man, Carter Woodson, came to Chicago 1915, and 11 years later started what was Negro. All that started at 3763 South Wabash.
And you
at
know
the
that because
at the Wabash Y. So
was your dad down there?
Well, my daddy got here in 1950 at that same Y. Okay. But the point is, Chicago, we have, if you just take DuSable High School, where his parents went, Phillips High School, where you went, and Inglewood High School, and Dunbar High School, and all that we produce in terms of people who have gone on to take care of their families and provide a way for their children. Now we have this disconnect, and we've got to get back, I think, and seriously analyze the things and use the strength in organizing that's in our best interest. And we need I'm saying we need a victory. We need to beat somebody and win something, so that our people can see that we can still stand up and fight in our own interests. And I think that's what's missing in Chicago.
And to do that, we have to be realistic. We have to recognize that right now we have a dropout rate of 60%, if you want to be honest, especially among African-American males. That's right, among African-American males. They are not prepared right now to join the IT revolution. President Obama says that we're going to spend a lot of money on IT and creating an infrastructure. Well, we know that that's not our strength. So that's why I say we have to focus on things like the greening of America and weatherproofing our homes and doing things that can immediately put our people to work without training. They have no education. There is no time to train them if this money is going to come down now. So we have to be realistic. We have to be honest. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't also aspire to participate in the IT revolution. We got caught behind the digital divide. That was unfortunate. It happened very, very swiftly, and it happened by design. We didn't have an agenda. We didn't have educators from some of the major colleges and universities around the world and around the country coming to us and saying, this is what you have to prepare for. We can't get caught flat-footed again. We know money's coming down the pipe as regards stimulus packages. We have to begin to prepare our people to take advantage of that which they can immediately. That's why I talked about what happened back in 1935 to 1943, how they paid people to do anything. We have to say, do the same thing for us right now. It's, as you indicated, you get a good education, you get a good job. That isn't available to us right now. So we need relief. We have to be able to feed our families.
We need entrepreneurship. We need to, Carter Woodson, if you're just going to talk about him, his greatest idea, as far as I'm concerned, aside from, you know, in the miseducation of Negro, talking about if you control a man's mind, you don't have to worry about his actions. His greatest idea in that book is the ability to make a living, which he distinguished from getting a job.
That's right.
And he pointed out how immigrants came from everywhere. They observed the need, they moved to fill that need, and they were able to become self-sufficient. We must do this. We have to do it for our own sakes. If for no one else, we have to be able to be resourceful and create work for ourselves to do, meet needs that we have ourselves. John Henry Clark used to say, you know, could we just produce toilet tissue? You know, just find something that we all need and move to meet that need. We have got to get that kind of spirit, because we're not all going to have jobs. There have never been one job per employable person in this country, and there never will be. So we have to always think in terms of those people who will not be able to get jobs, but who may be able to be employers.
Well, we have to go back to the way it was. We were a self-sufficient community, and we had employment because we purchased from each other. If we would simply do that, if we would spend $1, $2, $3 in our own community instead of taking it all downtown, that was one of the worst things that happened with integration. allowing us to go into their stores and begin to shop. But they didn't reciprocate. They didn't buy Baldwin ice cream. They didn't buy Parker House sausage, but we bought everything
Metropolitan.
or Metropolitan Life Insurance. We brought everything that they had, everything the white man had to sell, we purchased and didn't sell anything to them.
We're still doing that, Bill. And in the box stores,
That's
you
right.
go in there, you turn back a label, you will find made in China. You know, we're not manufacturing, we're not producing, but we are lined up in these stores from dawn to midnight, filling up carts full of things that we don't make ourselves, that we don't have any jobs except at the very lowest retail end, you know, the greeter at the front
service
door, or maybe the cashier at the counter. It doesn't make any sense. Why are you taking what little wealth you have to someone who is not hiring your people to work at levels where they can make a living wage, if there can be such a thing? Because you hear them talk all the time about how these people don't have health care, how they work long hours, how they don't have all kinds of benefits, and they have working conditions that are just borderline slave labor.
Right.
So, you know, we need to ask ourselves, where are we shopping? Where are we taking our money to? Who is sending their children to college with your
Our money.
paycheck?
That's right.
And that's when, you know, we not only need to think about jobs, but we need to think about how we are spending the money that we have. And we need to stop running in out of franchises, consuming things that last only for the moment.
That's right.
Well, everybody, it's well known throughout the world, if you want to make some money, all you have to do is to set up in not only the black community in Chicago, but all over the world. This is the formula. But people can't really get back to themselves until we get into the consciousness of the people. And we went through significant consciousness periods in our history, from doing away with referring to ourselves as a Negro people, to changing the nomenclature to a black people, and then a people of African descent, and connecting to Africa and understanding that we're a proud people to come. We've been through that, but somehow it's gotten lost because it's become a fad, and it didn't really get internalized in the soul of the people, and so it got lost. So we have a disconnect. We have to get back into the heads of our people, because the consciousness of our people.
You think there's room in there?
Oh yes, there's
There's
room.
a whole lot in the heads of our people.
Yeah, it's there. It just hasn't been tapped. I mean, you saw it in Oakland. I mean, we're beginning to behave like we did in the 1960s. When there's an incident, people get mad.
He's
they
speaking when the
begin
young
to
man
rebel.
got shot by the police officer on the platform.
It's there.
People rebel.
We have to redirect it and harness this energy into. I mean, look, I used to protest the Arabs when they opened up stores, and I would protest the Arab, and the next week they would open up another store, and I'd go over there. There'd be an incident where they would have done something to exploit our people. Somebody would call me, and I would go over there with Reverend Sampson and other people and protest that Arab. And I realized that there were 18 families that controlled 800, almost 1,000 grocery stores. The ringleader was the Swites family. They all lived in Oak Lawn. And I began to understand how the Arab people organized in Chicago, from Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine, etc., and how they, over the years, now have parlayed these little stores in our communities into other businesses, and selling our people reefer paper, toilet paper, white bread, milk, and send their children and enhance their economics of their family off of us. So I think we have to come back to basics. Why should other people be able to do in our community what we can do it for ourselves? So it's on our energy, it's on our spirit, it's on our self-determination to begin to get back to what we used to do when we were taking care of ourselves as a people.
And for this Black History Month, the word ought to be the one that Conrad just used, consciousness. If we awake with consciousness and act purposefully, we will achieve some things that have slipped by us time and time again. There is nothing holding us back except us. We can make demands, and these aren't demands against President Barack Obama, but against the Washington administration, and that includes the Congress, to ensure that we're included in the stimulus package. We can't fall further behind through the process. We already fell behind when they give $700 billion to the banks under the TARP program, and none of that money came back in relief to people who were still stuck paying those bills. So we have to begin to become conscious and have a plan to improve our condition step by step.
And a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
That's correct.
So the rhetoric is, is one thing, but the action that follows that rhetoric, if it doesn't, then we just been talking and having a conversation.
I don't know if you all noticed, but suddenly community organizing became a phenomenon associated with Barack Obama. Like Barack Obama was the creator of community organizing. But in our community, we don't talk about community organizing anymore. We say we had not-for-profit organizations. I think we have to get back and take back community organizing, because organizing in the black community is what advanced us as a people. So that's just a little interesting play on how they
Well,
took.
see, community organizing has to be homegrown. I don't care what the good intentions are of the people who come from someplace else. They're not living that experience. They don't have a vested interest, because if something doesn't succeed, they're not going to suffer the consequences. So whenever you got missionaries coming into the community from wherever they live, wherever they go back to at night, that's not community organization. Community organization is homegrown. And when you got people coming, they used to call it carpetbaggers. You got people coming in to organize the community, then you need to question their motives. You need your community to be organized because you live there, and whatever transpires there is going to impact you. You don't.
But what I'm
need
saying, we
somebody
got to
coming
take.
in.
We have to take back the discussion of community organizing.
We need to make sure we understand the difference between
a not-for-profit foundation, see, a community organizer.
Right.
And community organizer is not necessarily somebody who has an office.
Right.
Who has a building.
It's usually not somebody who has an office.
Our history of community organizing has been people who volunteered in their community, who were passionate about what was happening and began to organize.
In their homes, in their churches.
In their block clubs, et cetera. We have to get back to that.
Absolutely.
Instinctively.
And intuitively. Now we are just about out of time, so I have to thank you. I have to thank you, William Doc Walls, for coming in and joining my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Conrad Worrill.
Whom I admire and I know so well.
Right.
But Doc is getting close to, he is young. When I met him, he was like in his 20s, I think, when I first met Doc Walls.
Okay, so
time
is that a strike against him?
No, it's a strike on his side that he's still out here.
He's mellowed with age.
Still out on point, and that's a good thing, because that's what we need.
Okay. All right.
And Conrad Worrill has been a mentor to me. He's someone that I truly look up to. He's someone who understands the issues and articulates the issues in a way that it's indefeatable.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.